The following program is brought to you by Caltech.
Hi. Hello, Caltech alumni and special guests. We are delighted to welcome you back for Seminar Day and to celebrate the 2014 Distinguished Alumni Awards. Caltech is a community driven by scientific curiosity, integrity, and confidence in taking big risks. Community is a key word. The impact that any university has on the world really happens through its people, its faculty, staff, students, and you, alumni. Caltech takes great pride in techers and the success that you achieve within your chosen fields, whether as scientists, inventors, problem solvers, leaders, entrepreneurs, or educators. Together, we pursue the big ideas that help to shape and transform our world. I am deeply proud to be a part of this community, as I know you are. It is now my honor to introduce and welcome Caltech's Interim President and Provost, Dr. Edward Soper.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome and good morning to everybody. Welcome back to Caltech, and again to Seminar Day. And also, I want to thank the Alumni Association for arranging the entire reunion event and weekend and Seminar Day, and also to Paul Levin and his team for putting together what is a really exciting program. Let me extend a special welcome to the class of '64, their 50th reunion. Curiously, I happen to know several members of the class of '64, and I ran into them at the various events, and I can't believe that they are 50 years out. And I'll tell you, this is my 40th year reunion, and it's hard to remember that I'm so old. Actually, the thing that is, I actually remember so well college, so it's good. So I had fun interacting with the high number reunion classes. There actually were several I met from the class of '44, so their 70th reunion, which is quite remarkable, and they look great. And also the younger alumni that were at the party and reception last night. The other person I want to welcome and thank is Tom Rosenbaum, who's about to become the president. You want to stand up and wave at everybody? As I know from the events of the last couple of days, there's a lot of pent-up demand to say hello to him, so don't rush him all at once, but he's a very nice guy, and I've gotten to know him quite well because he was announced at the end of October, but he and I conspired because a long time was going to pass before he starts on July 1st. We talk for an hour every week, and I've really gotten to know and admire him, and I think he's going to be a truly outstanding president, and I'm looking forward to it myself, and I think the whole community is. So the point of this, what we're doing here, is to present the Distinguished Alumni Award to 6 Caltech graduates. We expect great things of all of you. Right? That's the norm. Follow many different paths, but you're all educated in a special way. You have special talents, and you have a mission. I believe, and that is, it's an extension of our mission, and that is to take a small group of people, and it is a small group, and give them a very intense and very rigorous and very focused scientific and technical education, but at the same time prepare you to be citizens of the nation, of whatever nation you're from, of the world, to make a difference with that technical education. So as part of that, there's also, for the undergraduates, a strong leavening of the technical education with humanities and social sciences. And although it's common these days for technical schools, for science, people that are educated in science and education, and engineering to be broadly educated, to understand the context of what they're doing. This is a hallmark of Caltech. When Caltech was founded, it was important that a quarter of all the classes taken by the scientists and engineers would be in humanities and social sciences. So it's extremely important. And so we expect and get great things. The nation gets great things for you. So for me, the Distinguished Alumni Awards are something particularly important because it's for people that do unexpected things. So we all expect great things from you and to make contributions, but it's for the unexpected things. And you'll see that the people we're recognizing today have done unexpected things. In thinking about today, there are people, in any given year, there are people that are alumni who do unusual and extraordinary things. And we've got a small list of them here, and I will read them to you. Two of your fellow alumni, Laurie Leshin and Phil Hanlon, were named presidents of universities in this year. Laurie will be president of Worcester Polytechnic, and Phil will be president of Dartmouth College. Martin Karplus, who has a PhD in chemistry and also won a Distinguished Alumni Award, received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry this year. Franz Cordova received a PhD, was sworn in as the director of the National Science Foundation recently, and she also received a Distinguished Alumni Award. Kevin Boyce, who's a professor at Stanford, a paleobotanist, was named a MacArthur Fellow. And now for the most unusual one of all. See, this fellow should win a Distinguished Alumni Award because this is not expected. Derek Circa led his team to capture the USA Curling Mixed National Championship. You know, we expect great things of all of you, but not necessarily winning the National Curling Championship. Also during this year, I just want to mention we mourn the passing of many alumni, but one in particular I want to mention is Gordon Fullerton, who had a big impact on the nation as a test pilot and astronaut for the Air Force and then for NASA, and he received an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, so we're sad for his loss. And his family is here, so I want to recognize him. I want to echo something that Heather said and say it more strongly than many of you may agree with, but it's what I believe. The impact of a university actually is mostly through its alumni. You know, over long periods of time, there's a lot of people that go out and are ambassadors and make a difference for the world because of the education they received at the university. And that's what we're honoring and recognizing and encouraging through this weekend, through these alumni awards. It is you who ultimately define how Caltech is viewed in the world because there are so many of you and you're out there making a difference. And so to me, it's extremely important to have a close relationship with our alumni and to let them know how much we appreciate what they've done and to see their accomplishments and the role that the Caltech education has had in what they've been able to do. So, one of the reasons I feel so strongly about this is I have to say my son just defended his thesis this week here at Caltech. And so, you know, he's going to join your ranks. He's going to join your ranks. I hope he does something extraordinary and someday gets to be a distinguished alumni. But he will bear the imprint of his Caltech education, which is very special. So, the Distinguished Alumni Awards were first presented in 1966, and it says, maybe it's what I've said. It's a highest honor bestows upon its graduates, and then in quotes, recognize a particular achievement of noteworthy value, a series of such achievements, or a career of noteworthy accomplishment. Actually, I expect that of all of you. So I want something even more, and these people have done something even more. So it's a privilege to present the Distinguished Alumni Awards to 6 extraordinary individuals. And the way this is going to work, it'll probably take 1 or 2 to get our motions down. I'll say a few words about why they were selected by the Alumni Association in Caltech for this recognition. Then they'll come up, I'll give them their parchment, shake their hands, have a picture taken, and then they will say a few words on a topic of their choice. Okay, so the first awardee is James Wong, who receives his PhD in '65. By the way, the order is going to be by date of award. So James has the earliest degree. And so he received his PhD in '65. In fact, he defended 50 years ago this month in May of 1964, but it was a little too late to get into the graduation, so his degree's in '65. He's the chairman of Chinny Holdings Limited, which is a corporation in Hong Kong. He's also an honorary professor of mathematics at the University of Hong Kong. James, I've actually gotten to know him quite well in the last years, one of the pleasures of being the interim president, and he's a remarkable fellow. He first came to the United States from Hong Kong in 1958 to study physics and math at Baylor. He was such an outstanding student that the people at Baylor said, there's only one place for you, and he came to Caltech for graduate studies. Then he went from here to going to being a professor of math at University of Alberta. It was apparently too cold. He moved he told me it was too cold. And he then moved down to Wisconsin, and then Carnegie Mellon and Iowa. So he's moving down. And always as a professor of math. So his distinguished career to begin with as a professor of math. But then he, in '74, went back to Hong Kong to take over his father's business. And what is the business? It's the Chinny Group. And James led the transformation of his father's company, and it manages assets. It was involved in construction and development, but manages assets totaling $2 billion and employing 2,000 people around the world. But in addition to this, all the while he's busy being a captain of industry, he also has continued with his mathematical research, writing more than 150 papers, holding adjunct professorships in Hong Kong. And so the citation is to James as a distinguished alumnus for substantial contributions to mathematics and commercial enterprise, and to take what he learned at Caltech and continue to make contributions to mathematics and also develop a major global industry is an unusual accomplishment. So join me in welcoming our first 2014 Caltech Distinguished Alumnus, James Wong. If you have the opportunity, he's a great raconteur. He tells great stories. He's come a long way. He and his family have come from Hong Kong. Come on up, James, and come over here. Let's see how we got to do this. Get on that side.
My fellow alumni, I'm very honored to be here. I have one amendment to add about my PhD 65. I did not have a father who was the interim president, so the PhD defense that I was scheduled, it was in May 20-some days, which I just missed the graduation. Because one of the examiners have something special, so the day was really postponed. So now I also got cut out from this half-century club until next year. It's a word of protest on behalf of the alumni. I'm probably one of the first Caltech students from Hong Kong. There was one earlier than me, that's Dr. Albert Yu, who was the distinguished alumni of 2011. But that was a fake. He was from Taiwan, but he was in Hong Kong only for 2 years. But he promised to be here tonight. I mean today, but he was not feeling well, and I shall go to visit him in Palo Alto towards the end of this week. I'm very proud to be here. I'm truly from Hong Kong and active with the small Hong Kong Alumni Association, and they at least do some, I guess, summer day scholarships by sending some of the Hong Kong graduates to this. I hope now that Hong Kong has 3 major universities. Other than the Hong Kong University, there's a Chinese university, and there's one which is called University of Science and Technology, and that is supposed to run like Caltech. In fact, the incumbent president, Tony Chan, formerly a professor at UCLA, was from Caltech, and he's now the president. So now you know at least 2 alumni, myself and him in Hong Kong. So if you come to Hong Kong, you can find us through the alumni office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. One of my pleasures as interim president is I went to Hong Kong, and there's a very active alumni group there, and they showed us great hospitality. It was great fun, and they're very, very engaged and proud of their connection to Caltech. Any of you, a famous geochemist once told me a story doesn't have to be right, it just has to be interesting. So, it's likely that many of my comments will have to be corrected. I'm going to get another one now.
My wife reminds me that I did not bring this. The one thing
You're going to pick it up afterwards. They're going to send it to you. Okay, so, you get to be a distinguished alumnus for more than a minute or two. All right, So it's okay for any and all of you to correct me when I say something wrong. I won't mind. But the story will have had a point, even if it's not right. Okay, so the next one is a second awardee is Mary Baker, who has a master's and a PhD in 1972, the master's in 67 in applied mechanics. She's the president of ATA Engineering Incorporated. So after earning her PhD at Caltech in applied mechanics, she joined the Structural Research Corporation, an early pioneer in computer-aided design and analysis, which she helped adapt to the unique needs of the aerospace industry. She eventually spun off a new company, ATA Engineering, which has continued to provide design, analysis, and testing to the aerospace industry. The corporation is deeply involved in NASA missions, especially at JPL. And I first met Mary when she, on behalf of the company, received an award at JPL given by the NASA administrator, the George Low Award for Technical and Business Excellence. It's NASA's premier award for quality and performance among its contractors and subcontractors. ATA has also been named one of the top small workplaces in the United States by the Wall Street Journal. So again, this is something special, I think. So her citation is for her pioneering entrepreneurship and leadership in aerospace. I'm pleased to present our second 2014 Distinguished Alumni Award to Mary Baker. Figured this out last time. Hold it together.
And then give it back to me.
You're going to give it back to me, and I'm going to send it away someplace. Okay. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
So as you've heard, the Distinguished Alumni Award started in 1966, and that's when I arrived at Caltech. Starting as a graduate student, I have attended Alumni Seminar Day for almost every one of the 48 years since, and have watched nearly every award. I never thought I would be up here receiving one, especially since I wondered whether I had been admitted by mistake after I arrived at Caltech and I realized the caliber of the other students. From my first arrival, I felt a special environment. It was okay to be an engineer. It was okay to talk about your work at a party and to be excited about the work that you were doing. Some people think that there were no women at Caltech in 1966. In fact, there were 7 women graduate students when I arrived, and I immediately had 6 friends, spread across campus in different departments. For example, Sue Kiefer was a geology graduate student who later became a distinguished alumna well known for her research on Mount St. Helens. We talked frequently. When she wanted to understand the mechanics of rocks, I shared the advice I had gotten on the excellence of Jim Knowles as a teacher, and she took his theory of elasticity class with me. After my second year at Caltech, a house on the edge of campus was converted into a women's graduate dorm. 2 of us moved in and welcomed 5 new women graduates. Among the newcomers were Uma Chowdhury, who just arrived from India and went on to become the head of research at DuPont, and Lily Jan, who had just arrived from China. Both of them have also become Caltech Distinguished Alumni. The graduate house was not only multidisciplinary, but multicultural. The 7 of us each invited our advisors to dinner and made food from our hometowns. That covered the corners of the US as well as India and China. It is the small size of Caltech that enables and necessitates interactions and collaborations across disciplines. We've heard that several times, across the disciplines, and it certainly was true for me. When prospective students ask me what is special about Caltech, I tell them it is one community, including not all the technical disciplines, but also the undergraduates, graduate students, faculty working, studying, and playing together. In my first year at Caltech, I swam laps in the 50-mile swim program with Professor William Smythe, who was well known for teaching electromagnetism to generations of physicists, including 5 Nobel Prize winners. I house sat for Professor Horace Gilbert, whose mission was to be sure that Caltech engineers understood the business elements of the companies that they worked for. After graduating, I visited him every alumni seminar day for as long as he lived. He would be happy to know that I ended up running a business. My advisor, Harold Wayland, was a physicist teaching mathematics to engineers and working in bioengineering. I studied for my oral exam in Firestone Library, where I often encountered Hirsch Cohen, a mathematician on sabbatical from being assistant director of IBM Research Labs, the location of my first job after getting a PhD from Caltech. I also took classes with several undergraduates, including Paul Diamantakis, who later became a Caltech professor. Many of the graduate students I knew at the time moved into leadership positions, such as Charles Alachi, who has led JPL through its very successful Mars exploration missions. Caltech is a place that has its priorities straight. Science comes first, and sports are for fun, everyone can play. When I became one of the first women allowed to live in the regular graduate dorms, I walked up to Mark's house where a group of students playing volleyball out front asked me to join them. My first thought was, you really don't want me to play because I'm not very good. Then I watched them play for a while. They were no worse than I was. So I decided maybe they did want me to play. At Caltech, sports are for everyone to enjoy. It is the science you have to be good at. Caltech taught me to be tough. Classes and exams, both written and oral, were tough. When my advisor realized I did not like to give presentations, his response was to make me give lots of them. While I was a PhD student, I gave 17 seminars at his instigation. After Caltech, when I faced the pressure of a critical design review or the stress of starting a new company, I often thought to myself, I survived Caltech, I can do this. I came for a master's degree and I stayed for a PhD because I did not want to leave this special place. When I did leave the academic world, it was because I felt as an engineer I should work on things that get built and fly or otherwise get put into service. ATA, the company I helped start, is my attempt to achieve a balance between the challenges of innovation at a university and the satisfaction of seeing one's ideas be put into service. ATA identifies and develops new engineering methods to address customer challenges for applications such as space missions and theme park rides. A special thrill was the opportunity to test real hardware for JPL's Mars Science Laboratory and then watch the Curiosity rover make its way to Mars. I very much appreciate Caltech for all it taught me, as well as my staff at ATA, whose good work has impressed Caltech enough to give me this award.
Thank you, Mary. I thought those remarks were wonderful, I have to say. Okay, next is Paul Steinhardt, received a bachelor's in '74 in physics. He also is this is his 40th reunion. I was class 74, someplace else. He's the Albert Einstein Professor in Science and Director of the Princeton Center for Theoretical Science at Princeton University. Paul is quite remarkable because he had made contributions in several different areas that are quite important. His cosmological contributions have shaped our understanding of the early formation of the universe, and in 1982, he, along with a graduate student, proposed the first successful working model of cosmic inflation. Those of you who were already here before the rest of us came in just heard Jamie Bach talk about the important recent BICEP 2 experiment and its connection to Caltech. And which, if confirmed, verifies the importance of inflation, and maybe Paul can say a few words about that. But I know him, partly I know him because his son was an undergraduate and is here in geology, so I knew him from that class of 2011. So he's a Caltech parent in addition to being an alumnus himself. But I first got to know him for his work on quasicrystals. Now, when I went to school, when we learned about crystal structures, we were told that there could be no crystals that had five-fold symmetry elements in them. And then, presumably roughly 30 or so years ago, it was discovered that, in fact, there were these things that Paul named quasicrystals that defied what we'd all been taught, and they do have five-fold symmetry. And he's done a lot of theoretical work understanding quasicrystals. But then he did something really quite interesting, in my view. He said, I wonder if any quasicrystals exist in nature, as opposed to have been synthesized in the laboratory. And he went on a search for, through all of the X-ray crystallographic data that was available to look for things that seemed to have the characteristics that might match being quasicrystals. And lo and behold, he found, I think it was a copper, aluminum, iron alloy in the weirdest rock you can imagine. I don't know if he's found others or if this is still the only one. I don't even know if it has a mineral name yet, which would be great because it would be an important mineral. It was, again, he was searching through libraries of X-ray diffraction patterns, and somebody had a rock in a museum in Italy. They had ground up the entire rock, so you couldn't study it particularly. And in looking for the candidate minerals, he found out about this rock, and he went and discovered, lo and behold, it has the natural quasicrystals in it. And then he came to us and said, can you help me figure out what this rock is, and why is there something special about it? And so he came and worked with some people at Caltech about characterizing it, because remember, it had all been ground up. It was all just microparticles that you could study. But then he did something else. He said, I need to find more of this stuff, and he went on an expedition to Russia and found more of the same material, and it's an unusual place to find a meteorite. It wasn't just sitting on the ground, it was in a sediment. So I know something of his work, and I think it's fascinating, and so I'm very pleased to be able to do this. And so he also is highly decorated for his contribution to the theory of quasicrystals, member of the National Academy of Sciences, and he won the Buckley Prize, the American Physical Society. So today, his citation reads, seminal contributions to theoretical physics and cosmology. I don't know why it doesn't say to quasicrystals. Maybe that was just left off, because that's what I find so interesting. So please join me in welcoming our third 2014 Caltech Distinguished Alumnus, Paul Steinhardt. Okay.
Well, standing at this podium is a very humbling experience and also makes one feel quite grateful. It's humbling to be sharing a distinction with such accomplished alumni, both the people here today and people who have received this distinction in the past. And of course, I feel grateful to so many people, grateful first and foremost to family who have provided love and support through thick and thin, including, as Ed mentioned, 2011 alumnus who accompanied me on a trip to the remotest area of northern Kamchatka Peninsula to look for little pieces of rock that might have quasi-crystals in them. Of course, I'm grateful to those who proposed and supported my nomination for this distinction. I'm grateful to slews of collaborators and students who have provided inspiring ideas. Grateful to colleagues who have encouraged me at various stages when you're trying to do something very daring. Nevertheless, they provided encouragement and support. I'm grateful to be in a society that supports basic research of the sort that I pursue. And of course, I'm extremely grateful and profoundly grateful to Caltech and all that it's given me. I came to Caltech in 1970 as a 17-year-old, really not knowing what I wanted to do, but I really didn't have a very positive impression about physics, so I was pretty sure that wasn't what I was going to do. Within a few days, I met Peter Goldreich and my freshman advisor, Tom Tembrello, and I began to take freshman physics from Tommy Lauritsen. And I think it was about 2 weeks that I suddenly was converted, and I haven't looked back since. And I had the great fortune of working in research with a number of just extraordinary scientists like Tommy Lauritsen and Andrew Ingersoll in astrophysics, and Barry Barish in particle physics, and most importantly to me, Richard Feynman, who I had a chance to do my senior work with. And from that experience, I learned several important things. I learned, first of all, that disciplinary lines should be ignored. Just look for good puzzles wherever they lie, and they lie all over the place. And once you find a good puzzle, the first thing you should do is question conventional wisdom, because that's likely to be where the solution to the puzzle lies, and challenging that conventional wisdom. And when you pursue science, pursue it passionately, pursue it honestly, and pursue it with the utmost seriousness. Because if you pursue it very, very seriously, you will have a heck of a lot of fun. And that really epitomizes my experience at Caltech, pursuing science and pursuing education seriously, honestly, passionately, and having a heck of a lot of fun. And also my experience as a scientist. Just to name an example, since Ed talked about the quasi-crystals part of the story, I'll say something about the cosmology part of the story. We find ourselves now at a really fascinating juncture in the field of cosmology. We've had these fascinating results reported 2 months ago by the BICEP2 collaboration, and those of you that were here in the talk previous heard Jamie Bach, one of the leaders of that collaboration, talk about that work. And the immediate response was to reach a certain conclusion and to conclude that the standard model of cosmology has been proven. At least that's what it said in some circles. And as often happens in science, when you stare closely and carefully, you discover puzzles and questions. And now, 2 months later, we're having this fascinating meeting just a block or so away, in which those puzzles are being uncovered, and it's not clear what's going to happen. It could well be that the standard model that we thought was proven ends up being disfavored, and models that we thought we had discarded may come to the fore. And what will decide it will be the next round of experiments. 8 different groups throughout the world are going after this same science, and we'll know the answer in about a year or two. And one thing's for certain, it's going to be a wild ride, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. So I feel really fortunate that Caltech has put me in a position where I can be a participant in a science, this extraordinary science at this extraordinary time. So I thank Caltech and all that contributed to me. Thank you.
Okay, next, Richard Miller, PhD in Applied Mechanics in 1976, and he's the president of the Olin College of Engineering. It's not enough to say that Rick is the president of the Olin College of Engineering. This is a grand experiment in how to redefine engineering education, and it is turning out to be successful. He was its founding president and the college's very first employee. And, you know, well, there must be other examples, but I don't know of them. It is not common to start a new university or a new college, all right? You know, we all are the next in line of places that have been there for a while and that have been defined already by, as I say, by the accomplishments and the contributions and approach of their alumni. And so it's a very daring thing. The Olin program is different, and it has an innovative approach to engineering education, trying to bring students into contact when they are undergraduates with real-world engineering problems, and then to see the importance and how to use creativity when they approach these real-world problems. And that's part of the education, not just learning the equations, learning by design studies or by building things, but it's to be thrown into real-world engineering applications, and it's working. So he received his PhD here, as I said, in 1976 in applied mechanics. He's a member of the National Academy of Engineering, and he won the National Academy of Sciences Gordon Prize for Innovation, Engineering, and Technology Education just last year. And it understates the achievement and the audacity of trying to do something new in something very, very important, and yet where people had already thought they knew how to do it. It's sort of, as Paul said, challenge the conventional wisdom. So we honor him with our fourth 2014 Distinguished Alumni Award for his visionary leadership, this is in quotes, visionary leadership and commitment to innovation in engineering education for the benefit of society. So please join me in welcoming our fourth alumnus, Dick Miller.
Well, before I start, let me say that my wife still thinks of what I'm doing as my midlife crisis. Last year, of all the bachelor's degrees that were offered in the United States, to all the students majoring in all disciplines, only about 4% went to students who were majoring in engineering of any kind. This is a declining percentage. It's about a factor of 3 smaller than it was when I graduated. In Europe, the percentage is about 12%. In Asia, it's about 26%. Furthermore, about half of all the students who declare engineering as a major as they start their career this fall will not graduate in engineering. And only 18% of the students who graduate in engineering are women. Now, I'm deeply humbled and honored beyond words at this recognition today to be chosen for inclusion among the honor roll of Caltech alumni is far beyond any expectation that ever occurred to me as even a remote possibility. There's so many other Caltech alumni that are stunningly exceptional, it's hard for me to accept how I could measure up. I want to thank Caltech and all those who were responsible for my selection. It's not possible to explain to you how much this means to me, particularly at this time. Caltech provided me with a model of superb academic excellence and also of personal support and guidance from several dear mentors that have seeded my vision for the creation of Olin College. Both institutions are extremely small. Both are extremely good at the mission that they've chosen. An occasion like this provides a rare opportunity, in fact, essentially a necessity, to reflect on one's career. Looking back, I see a long stream of extremely fortunate events. long sacrificial support from my wife and family, unfailing encouragement and support from Caltech mentors, and a slow realization that my passion and mission lay not in continued scientific or engineering research, as I was trained to do here at Caltech, but instead in understanding how best to educate the next generation. Now, this left turn in my career led to many nights of insecurity and self-doubt, and even persistent feeling of regret that my colleagues at Caltech would be disappointed in me, feeling that I turned my back on my early technical training. So this affirmation by Caltech has helped fill a hole inside and made me feel good about the life-changing decision to devote my career in the last 15 years to rethinking STEM education in the 21st century. Thank you again for this enormous honor, the greatest honor of my career. I will never fully feel worthy of this, but I'll always feel deeply grateful to all that Caltech has given me and continues to give me. I also see the answer to prayer and the influence of what I believe must be divine intervention in my life through the many unlikely twists and turns as I took risks, as I walked away from tenure twice, as I changed institutions 4 times, dragging my family 3,000 miles across the country. I think my wife thinks my next job is going to be in Helsinki. We started in Santa Barbara. It seems in retrospect that it's all worked out for the best. This is captured pretty well in a quote from the Bible, in Ecclesiastes 9 and 11. I returned and I saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. I'm so very fortunate to be standing here today. Thank you.
Although I know Rick does wonder, I believe him when he says, I'm surprised, but you know, it's a remarkable achievement, and all of you, what we value as an institution are, as Paul said, as you said, you know, to do things that are audacious, to do things that are different, go against the conventional wisdom. And that's part of the recognition I hope that we're giving in the Distinguished Alumni Awards today. Okay, next. The 5th awardee is Richard Scheller, PhD in 1980 in chemistry and chemical engineering, probably in chemistry. He is the Executive Vice President for Research and Early Development at Genentech. I see some similarity with James Wong in that Richard starts out doing outstanding research on his own and becomes a professor. His work at Caltech, synthesizing DNA and proteins in order to study their interactions, actually helped lead to the creation of the biotech company that now works for Genentech. But then, after this, he went on to become a professor at Stanford, and I think he was a professor there for roughly 20 years. You can correct me, it's something like that. And where he conducted extremely important research on the molecular underpinnings of neurotransmitter release. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences. And for those of you who know, there are some very important awards, and he won the Lasker Basic Medical Research Award for this work. So as a scientist, very distinguished, following a path that many of us recognize. But then he took a risk, and he described this to me, that it was a big change to give up this extraordinarily successful research program to go back to Genentech in 2001. And now he's responsible for overseeing research from initial discovery to proof of concept for the amazing set of contributions that Genentech is making to human health across the world. And he's described this to several of us, and it's really amazing what Genentech is doing. And so again, there's something different here. Gets trained as a research scientist, goes off and does what research scientists do, does it extremely well in an extremely distinguished fashion, but again, does something audacious, takes a risk, and goes off into industry, same as James did, in some ways the same as Rick did. And so it's a real pleasure to honor him today for his seminal work in leadership in biological sciences, and also for what he's doing in the world of business and in the creation of drugs for humanity. So I'm pleased to present Richard Scheller for the 5th 2014 Distinguished Alumnus Award.
Thanks so much, everyone. I learned that I was going to have the opportunity to make some remarks as I was walking into the auditorium. I will take this up with my administrative assistant when I get home. I have some remarks that I've written on a receipt from dinner a couple of nights ago. As Ed mentioned, I have received some awards that some people might feel are as or more important than this award, but I can tell you honestly that this award is the most important one for me personally, having graduated, of course, from Caltech. I was also fortunate to be able to deliver the Norman Davidson Memorial Lecture to the folks here at the Institute yesterday, and that was also particularly rewarding as Norman was the chairman of my thesis committee many years ago, and I did get a little bit choked up in those remarks prior to the lecture. I also had the opportunity, though, to visit some of the young faculty at Caltech yesterday, and I met a remarkable young scientist who started his lab here a year ago, coming from the Whitehead Institute at MIT. I met a remarkable young woman who started her lab here about a year ago, coming from Stanford. And from what I saw, based on my visit, the Institute really is still tremendous, and the greater things are still to come for Caltech in the future. My current role in developing medicines, I bring the scientific rigor that I really learned here to my work. I remember the times that I spent with my thesis advisor, Eric Davidson, where we would spend 2 hours in his office with a small group of graduate students reading papers and trying to understand whether the conclusions that were made or the papers were actually true or not. There were times when we would spend 8 hours on a single paper, going into the details of the methods, going into the conclusions, really digging into whether the conclusions were justified. And I feel as though it's extremely important. That was an extremely important influence on me that I've brought to bear on all of my scientific career throughout the years. The medicines that we've developed at Genentech, mostly cancer medicines, have added millions of years of life to people. Millions of years. That's something I'm extremely proud of. And the molecules, the medicines that we have in development, I'm sure will add many millions of more years of life to people throughout the years. And I feel that Caltech is in no small part responsible for putting me in a position to help patients. Thank you.
Our final awardee is David Chavez, received his bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1996. And so we spanned from James with his degree in 65, but he defended in 64, we already know that. So basically almost 30 years we're spanning of our alumni in this award this year, and that's wonderful. He's at Los Alamos. He's the principal investigator and project leader there. His contributions to the field of chemistry have included the creation of versatile new synthetic compounds and processes of high nitrogen compounds that have led to more environmentally friendly explosives and propellants. His scientific advances can be seen not only in the improved weapon systems used by our nation's armed forces, but in the fireworks set off from Disneyland each night. And I don't know if I'm on the committee or if I just sit there ex officio when the decisions are made for the Distinguished Alumni Awards. And I'll tell you that there was a professor who actually could understand in some detail what David had done, and it was the most fascinating explanation of chemistry. You know, we go look at these fireworks, and they're pretty, and they're interesting, and they're fascinating, but they are very heavy in bad pollutants. Maybe you've changed the whole world and they don't use that anymore, but the ones we all saw when we were kids were wonderful and noisy, but very dirty. And what David has done is change it through these high nitrogen compounds where they are maybe even prettier, but they are clean. And so it's a very interesting and remarkable contribution. And also by being at a national lab, he's making a contribution to the national welfare. So after getting his undergraduate degree here at Caltech, he went on to get a PhD at Harvard and then did postdoc work at Los Alamos, and he stayed there. And he's an important scientist there. So we're honoring David today for his extensive and groundbreaking contributions to chemistry. So please join me in welcoming and congratulating our sixth and final 2014 distinguished alumnus, David Chavez.
Thank you very much. Like many of the other award winners this evening, I am also very humbled by the recognition of this award. I wanted to begin by thanking those who really helped me to, I guess I would say, find confidence in myself. So I wanted to start off with a story about how I got to Caltech, and I'll try to keep my comments short, but I had the opportunity to participate in a summer science program at the Los Alamos National Lab when I was a sophomore in high school, and it really inspired me to look at the opportunities that I didn't really see were available to a student like me. And I just happened to have the opportunity to listen to a presentation from a graduate student at Caltech who happened to be at the lab presenting, and it inspired me to have Caltech as my goal as a school to attend. So I applied, and as a high school student, I felt like most high school students probably do. They feel like they're invincible and they can do, nothing's going to stop them. And I received a note from my high school counselor that said, come and speak to her. So I went in, and she said, we got this phone call from Caltech today, and they had some questions about your preparation. And I went to a small rural school, so I didn't have a lot of very hard science courses, at least not in the type that would be required to be very successful at Caltech. So she said they're a little bit concerned. And I responded, well, how did you respond to them? And she said, well, I told them this is the best student we have here, and either take them or don't. So I took with that, well, I guess I'm not getting into Caltech. and I thought to myself, wasn't there anything, couldn't you lobby a little bit better on behalf? And interestingly, my high school counselor turned out to be a godparent of mine, so I was even more wounded by that. I was shocked by the letter I received the following week accepting me to the school. As I went through the process of being educated, becoming educated at Caltech, what I didn't realize was that I was really being formed in a way that gave me the confidence to have a vision and to see further than I thought I could really see in terms of science. And I didn't really realize that until I was in graduate school. And my first graduate group meeting that I had to present at was, I was a graduate student at Harvard, and I thought to myself, here I am presenting to Harvard graduate students and postdocs and a Harvard professor, and they're going to, what are they going to think of me? This was the most nerve-wracking presentation I had given in my life at that point. But as I began to think about it, I thought, well, how hard can Harvard be? I went to Caltech. The important things that I learned at Caltech were that I had, what I really learned about science was the importance of mentors. I had mentors in my summer program at the laboratory as a high school student. I had very strong mentors at Caltech, and I'd like to name them. Professor Sunny Chan was my advisor. He really helped me to understand the process of learning at an institution like this. Professor Eric Herrera, who moved on to a different institution, was also integral in really guiding me and helping me make it through difficult times and some of the struggles of being an undergraduate. And also Professor John Burkow, who helped inspire me as well, especially with respect to the importance of the work that is being done at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. I also wanted to use this opportunity to relay just one quick short story, and that was when I first came to Caltech, they had a bridge program. It was called the Bridge Program to help students who may not have had access to advanced AP or other types of courses, and help bridge the high school level preparation to the actual coursework of Caltech. And during that time, I really found that I was struggling a lot, and I didn't know whether I could really handle the pressure of the level of intensity of the work. So I called home many times to my parents, in particular my dad, and I would be looking for a way out. Something that would allow me a back door to kind of slip out the back, and no one would ever know that I was here and that I had never tried. But I had the opportunity to have a person tell me, you know, the semester hasn't even started yet, and you know, you're wanting to walk out the door. Why don't you wait until the first year? You know, it's pass-fail, and give that a shot. And so I think I'm grateful, and I hope my dad's grateful that I stopped calling him. And I gave it a shot, and I don't think I ever called back with those types of words of looking for a way out. So I also wanted to mention that I'm very humbled by this award. When I received the phone call from Provost Stolper, the caller ID said unknown on it. And
entirely appropriate.
And someone had just called before that, and then the phone rang again, and I thought, well, you know, this is probably important. I need to answer this. I received the phone call. I was notified that I had been selected for a Distinguished Alumni Award, and like some others who have spoken up here this evening, I thought, well, how can I be a person who is a distinguished alumni from this university? I talked to Provost Stolper. I got the information. He talked to me about the process and everything. And we hung up, got off the phone. But I still didn't really believe it. And since there was no callback number, I didn't know that this wasn't a practical joke. So over the next maybe 3 to 4 weeks, I heard nothing about this. And I started wondering, did I make this all up? Was this really a figment of my imagination? So I started doing internet searching and trying to find, well, did this really happen or not? And then finally I did get sort of a roundabout second-hand piece of information that confirmed that this really was true. So again, I'm very humbled by the award. I am very grateful, and I hope to continue to inspire others to make a strong effort, especially when they feel that when they're down or when things just are at their low points in their lives, that there's nothing really that can replace hard work, and that hard work is what I hope to inspire others to see, and if you work hard, that many, many things are possible. So thank you very much.
Well, this concludes our this part of the ceremony, and I thank and commend the honorees, and really think about what they said. They're what they said. Each and every one of them was fascinating and illustrates, I think, what's special about Caltech alumni, and also I do believe that each one of them has been epitomized what we want to try to accomplish in the education and then see in the contributions to science, to education, to engineering, to humanity, to the nation among our alumni. And they really have done something very, very special. I want to thank the people that nominated them as well. The nomination process is open to all of you, anybody, and it's through people that know their fellow alumni well that we are able to select such outstanding people. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks again to Paul for organizing it. Heather Dean will now come up and introduce Carver Mead for the next part of the program. Thank you.
I'm inspired and more proud than ever to be part of this community. I'm sure you feel the same way. So Ed got it slightly wrong. I'm actually the introducer of the introducer. So it's my pleasure to introduce and thank Paul Levine. Paul is a Caltech alumnus who received his bachelor's degree in engineering in 1972. He has been this year's chair of the Seminar Day Committee. I also want to thank all the members of the Seminar Day Committee. Would the Seminar Day Committee members in attendance please stand up so that we can recognize you?